There are mechanics in Warzone 2 that are built to make you fail, and it leads to a lot of frustration, and this video is going to solve it for you. Now, if you've ever experienced COD timing or heard of the word COD timing, it's this unfortunate window of gameplay where you're doing something like reloading, finishing an opponent, or switching guns, where somebody just magically appears at a very unfortunate time and puts you down. But COD timing isn't just a meme. It's a physical part of Warzone 2 that is built into the mechanics of the game, that every single weapon in Warzone 2 completely possesses. And when you combine slow animations with a lightning fast time to kill, you get COD timing, where you die really quickly in very unfortunate circumstances because you simply didn't have time to react. Now, this phenomenon isn't just a meme or something that wildly exists in the game. It is something that you can solve, fix, and completely retune your game in order to stop it from happening. So by the time you finish watching this video, you'll be killing a lot more people and dying a hell of a lot less. As per usual, if you're interested in these kind of detailed breakdowns to improve your game, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 200k, and we've got lots more of this content coming, both long form and on YouTube Shorts. Now, if you weren't aware, there are about 7 or more statistics for every single weapon in Warzone 2, which entirely determines how much you're fumbling around with the gun, and how much the gun gets slowed down in total. We have reload time, aim down sight time, the time to exit aim down sight, dropping your weapon and raising your weapon when you're switching weapons, the sprint to fire time, and the tactical sprint to fire time. And when you combine all of these together in a single passage of gameplay, you can have entire windows of seconds where things are just not going your way, you can't react, and you're fumbling around with stupid animations instead of engaging your opponent. And certain combinations of weapons or lack of perks or certain pieces of equipment can make this entire situation far, far worse. But this is a really fixable problem. And I'm going to show you some examples today which illustrate just how certain meta weapons or combinations of weapons actually make you a worse player. And this isn't something anybody mentions when they're trying to sell you the 75th meta RPK of the week. So for this example, I'm going to take the meta RPK that everybody wants you to use right now in Warzone 2. Let's assume you've ran into 1 or 2 opponents and you're shooting at them. Maybe you've downed 1 of them, and then you need to reload. On the meta RPK, with all of the attachments available, it takes 636 milliseconds to aim down sight, and then another 600 milliseconds to exit the aim down sight, and then a total of 4.97 seconds for you to actually have to reload, meaning a grand total of 6,206 milliseconds or 6.2 seconds. And this actually jumps up to about 6.4 seconds if you were sprinting to fire or tactical sprinting before you aim down sight. Sprint to fire on the RPK is 250 milliseconds, and tactical sprint to fire is 375. So somewhere in and around the region of 6.4 to 6.5 seconds just for you to enter a passage of gameplay with the RPK. For you to shoot a target, reload your gun, and be ready to shoot again takes a grand total of about 6 seconds throughout the entire thing. During this time, you're vulnerable during the sprint to fire window, which is 250 milliseconds. You're vulnerable during the aim down sight time, which is 636 milliseconds. And you're vulnerable during the 4.9 seconds it takes to reload the gun, leaving a massive window of vulnerability where you could get killed by an opponent and simply not be able to do anything about it, or in other words, COD timing. To highlight how mental a problem this is, I've decided to highlight in red on screen the moments when I'm vulnerable when using an RPK. And sure enough, it clocks in and around 6.5 seconds. So let's compare this RPK, which is the #1 gun on the planet right now, to the Castov 7.62, which has the exact same time to kill, but is far more mobile and only has a 40-round magazine. Now, compared to the RPK, this same passage of gameplay of aiming down sight, reloading your gun, and being ready to shoot somebody else takes fractions of time comparatively. Aiming down sight with the Castov 7.62 takes 427 milliseconds instead of 636. And then once you've finished aiming down sight, unaiming down sight or exiting aim down sight only takes 435 milliseconds instead of 600. and then reloading the gun takes 2.69 seconds instead of 4.97 seconds. So that exact same passage of gameplay took 6.5 seconds with the RPK, only takes 3.5 seconds with the Castov 7.62. And this applies to every single statistic. Sprinting to fire with the 7.62 takes 212 milliseconds compared to 250, and the tactical sprint to fire is 312 milliseconds compared to 375. You end up with substantially less magazine capacity, being 40 compared to 75, but the overall fluidity of the weapon is practically double the RPK, meaning you're vulnerable for half the time. Now you're probably wondering, if we're talking about milliseconds and seconds, surely it isn't that big a deal. But the reality is that all of these statistics compound each other, meaning that they stack up in total. So aim down sight time, exiting your aim down sight time, yeah, these things are little details here and there, same with the reload time. But there's also other stats in the game like sprint to fire time, tactical sprint to fire time, or drop and raise time. So every single time you throw a grenade or a smoke grenade in Warzone 2, there is a drop time for your weapon and then a raise time. So dropping the gun to throw the grenade on the 7.62 takes 630 milliseconds, and on the RPK it takes 830. And then picking the gun back up after throwing the nade takes 830 milliseconds on the AK versus 1200 milliseconds or 1.2 seconds on the RPK. And when you start compounding all of these statistics together, there are loads of wide windows of gameplay where the RPK ends up being the worst weapon to use compared to its 7.62 AK variant. For the sake of 35 bullets, you end up being vulnerable for over double the time compared to the assault rifle variant. These statistics also help explain why certain weapon combinations actually end up feeling worse. For example, most people combining the RPK with the fennec. Now there's no denying that the fennec is still one of the best weapons in the game, with a really fast reload speed, one of the fastest time to kills in the game, so on and so forth. But what most people don't realize is that when combined with the RPK, it actually makes you more vulnerable than pretty much any other SMG in the same category. Now, the fennec, much like the MP5 and the Lockman and the BASPI and the Hurricane, have pretty much the same speed in terms of picking up the gun or dropping and raising it when you're switching weapons. But why the fennec feels worse is that it has double the aim down sight speed of pretty much every other gun in the game, even when tuned to be the best. For example, a Meta Vaznev has an aim down sight speed of 250 milliseconds, compared to the fennec's 405 millisecond aim down sight speed. So a difference of 150 milliseconds, which doesn't sound like a huge amount, but when you factor in that it takes an extremely long time to switch weapons with the RPK, add in the extra penalty of aiming down sight with the fennec, then suddenly you start having issues. The fennec, for example, has a fairly decent reload speed, but with the fastest rate of fire in the game means that you lose ammunition at effectively 20 to 30% faster than every other SMG in the game, meaning that although it's quicker, you end up reloading substantially more. And all of these little known statistics combined together can show you why certain combinations like the recommended fennec and RPK are great on paper, but if you don't adjust your gameplay for these instances of COD timing, you end up being put in the dirt. And weapons such as the Castov 7.62 when combined with the fennec, or the Castov combined with the Vaznev, can actually be more lethal or more reliable than those alleged meta combinations. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this deep dive video on COD timing and the mechanics related to it. If you enjoyed this kind of content, check out my most recent video on Warzone 2's audio, which explained how you can get the best out of the existing system. And of course, if you want more deep dives like this, hit the subscribe button and catch more content on Warzone 2 just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.